I had a student out on the coast over the weekend, and she got some coastal varieties from the California FFA Forestry plant list. These are pretty cool because being in the Sacramento Valley, these are samples that we don't see very much. So I'm going to do a quick video rundown of these samples, and hope this will help you. First thing that we have here that is pretty neat is the Sitka spruce cone. The cone has flaky, the scales are flaky and the scales are not toothed. Then we have a red alder. The red alder, I've never seen one in the Sacramento Valley, but I guess they exist. The red alder has uniform secondary veins on the back, and it has the leaf edge is indented or double toothed, and the leaf edges are curled. If it was a white alder, the leaf edges would be finely toothed and not curled. So that's the red alder. Always has this smooth stem. It's got the leaf bud there coming on for next year already. Next we have plant sample with a very large maple shaped leaf, clearly identifiable as the big leaf maple. This one's all over, but it's a great sample, has a huge leaf, can't miss it. Here we have a rhamnus. Rhamnus is identifiable by a pretty smooth leaf edge, very uniform secondary veins. This particular variety of rhamnus is not very common at contests, but sometimes you'll see it. It is called, the common name is cascara, but it's a coffee berry, and usually what we see is Rhamnus californica, which is the coffee berry that is most common. This was, again, cascara. Always turn these things over when you identify them. So you see uniform secondary veins on this side. On the other side, the leaf is darker, stem is red, and the rhamnus has a pretty large leaf, whereas the California coffee berry has a smaller leaf that's not quite as brilliant green. This is, hopefully everybody should know that this is the California coastal redwood. It's always green and shiny on top. The stem is always typically pretty green, especially new growth. Turn it upside down. Always turn these things upside down. The needles are frosty, and always has these little, I don't know what these are, these little things there at the stem joints. Sometimes there will be cones at the end in the springtime. It's different than the fir because if you look how the needles tie into the stem, they are tied in tighter, what I would call a tighter formation there. Anyway, shiny green on top, frosty green underneath. California redwood. Then we have cowdy bush. Cowdy bush has these little bitty green leaves. Sometimes they're fuzzy, depending on how new the leaf is. And many times the leaf has these little tiny teeth toward the end of the leaf. It's pretty easy to identify. It's pretty unique. Has these little bitty green leaves. The stem has edges and is not round, if you look closely. And when you twist it between your fingers, you can feel the stem edges in your fingers. Next we have a conifer. Always turn these conifers over when you try to identify them. This one's pretty uniform when you turn it over. Not too much of a difference. Needles are short, but when you take a look at this and you feel it with your hands, the needles are very fine, but they're sharp on the ends, and you can feel them in your hands. Very sharp. Not sharp like a nutmeg, but they're sharp enough to be very noticeable. That is the identifying feature of this conifer that makes it Sitka spruce. Then another real simple one that's easy to identify with the orange bark, these fleshy leaves, usually finely toothed. I have seen samples that are more coarsely toothed, but usually finely toothed, orange bark, Pacific madrone. Then we have another really cool sample here. This sample has short needles and long needles. It is called dual planed. This is the underside of the leaf or the sample. And you see how the needles are tied in not uniform or not tight. So they look like they'll come off. If you can pluck these off like that, and it leaves a little round circle there, that makes it a fir. See that little circle there where I plucked the needle off? Leaves a circle, that makes it a fir. This one is grand fir, has short needles and long needles. Has a row of short ones and a row of long ones. If I turn this over, you might be able to see it better. You have a row of short ones and a row of long ones. So that's grand fir. Does not exist in the Sacramento Valley or on the eastern Sierras. So it's really exciting to see a really fresh sample of grand fir. This one you can see the short needles in there. They kind of inset back in there. So that's grand fir. Next we have a fern. There's two ferns on the FFA forestry list. There is a sword fern and a bracken fern. Well, if you look at the leaves on this, the leaves look like swords, so that makes it sword fern. Also, the sword fern is usually bigger. The bracken fern has brackens and it's smaller and lacy. They're pretty easy to distinguish. So that's the sword fern. I believe this is another rhamnus. It is. This is cascara again. Again, the cascara or rhamnus is not a common one at the contest, but if you see this, don't let it trick you. It is a rhamnus. This is another sample of the grand fir. Looking closely, you see two rows, short needles and long needles. Always turn these things over. Another identifying feature of the grand fir is that usually the needles are more green as opposed to the white fir or the red fir. They're more green for some reason, I don't know why. And then we're back to the Sitka spruce. Quick rundown of a few coastal varieties. Hope this helps.